Friends and family. Charles Ponzi exhilarated thousands who initially invested their savings with him and millions of others who only heard about it. Then Ponzi became a legendary villain, thrown in jail and later deported. Ponzi's plan had a major flaw that led to exposure. There was one element of Ponzi's venture, however, that was thoroughly repugnant, even to those who longed for his income promises to be true. It was that he had solicited or accepted funds from personal associates who lost it all when his plan imploded. This revulsion against Ponzi for having cost family and friends their life savings reflected a shared value that certain areas of life were non-commercial, off limits to business, and literally more important than money. As Arthur Leff explained, among families and social networks, persuasion is fundamental to the viral spread of pyramid selling, aka multi-level marketing, resulting in the defrauding of closest associates. Trust and love then become carriers of the toxic proposition, igniting a person-to-person epidemic. Today, MLM solicitations presented as personal or even intimate conversations or invitations are everywhere on the internet and experienced by virtually everyone almost daily. Who can escape them at family gatherings, in the office, at places of worship, on Facebook, or in the dreaded call, text, or email from a nearly forgotten classmate, suddenly and inexplicably wanting to, quote, have coffee and catch up? Somewhere in the 25 years between Ponzi and Neutralite, the latter of which was to become America's first pyramid scheme operating on a national scale as a chartered sales company, the public aversion toward profiteering on intimate relationships greatly diminished and for many ceased to exist at all. Overall reactions to these devious financial intrusions into personal spheres of life, worship, friendship, family, have declined from moral outrage to mere annoyance or grudging tolerance. For many others, there is no longer any boundary at all. Even a funeral is a setting where the rawest human feelings and the deepest blood connections offer a special recruiting opportunity. Between 1920 and 1945, a cultural phenomenon would be needed to build upon Ponzi's mythical promise of Wall Street profits for Main Street, but which also would make the solicitations of money from family and friends permissible and legitimate. Ponzi and all his descendants tapped into a hidden treasure trove among the poor and working classes. It was their own money, and that of all their social connections. The Ponzi money transfer mines the collective investments of hundreds of thousands of people and promises the aggregate wealth to each and every person as an unlimited income. They would be taught to solicit it, as Dale Carnegie instructed, with a real smile, a heartwarming smile, a smile that comes from within, person to person, among their closest relations, explaining to all how the magic of exponential expansion will work for everyone. Arthur Leff identified two historical phenomena, largely forgotten or diminished in public understanding today, that set the stage for a Ponzi-type swindle based on commercially exploiting intimate and social relationships. Both of these phenomena serve as harbingers and markers of the hurricane social force on the horizon. Both are swindles in their own rights. One is a devious technique specific to direct selling, Mittinger and Castleberry's shared milieu, and the other was a grassroots delusion that spread like a virus in the heartland of American civil society, in neighborhoods, factories, churches, clubs, and offices, captivating the very same people who would later become candidates for Mittinger and Castleberry's newly invented version of direct selling. The two phenomena are the money chain letters and referral selling. Each promises great rewards whose bounteous source is not fabricated like Ponzi's and Madoff's were, but openly acknowledged. And the reward, at least for some, is real, spendable cash. Reward money is to be gained from the expenditures investments of one's friends and family. Ponzi's need to concoct the bogus income source would be eliminated. The referral selling scheme and the money chain letter mania were bridges from Ponzi to Neutralite. Money chain letters preceded the referral selling schemes, though the referral trick may have been in informal use in door-to-door selling before being officially identified and outlawed in the 1960s. The money chain letter exploded in America starting in 1935, when Mittinger was immersed in the cemetery plot industry, traveling between Maine and Southern California. Castleberry had just gained his doctoral degree and begun offering counseling services. His book, How to Use Psychology, was just a few years from publication. Dale Carnegie's book, which advocates commercial selling techniques to, quote, win friends, would appear just 1 year after money chain letters set the country on fire with hope. In a successful sale, just as in a workable swindle, the source of the enticing reward or savings must be external, not owned and offered by the swindler or the seller himself, as explained in Swindling and Selling. Further, the narrative must explain how the swindler and the victim need each other. That is, why should they enter into a transaction together? In Mittinger's plan, the seller offered enrollment in the plan that promised unlimited income. The buyer provided the needed access to his friends and family for recruiting purposes. The ensuing money stream, sourced from those intimate relationships, would supposedly flow upward to the benefit of both recruiter and his mark. In the midst of America's worst economic downturn, with almost 1 in 4 out of work, and thousands of farmers losing their land and livelihood both to foreclosures and a climactic disaster, a mysterious event occurred that promised not merely financial relief, but a life-changing windfall for all. It did not come from Roosevelt's New Deal. It did not come from churches that had set up soup kitchens and temporary housing, or from any popular political movements that promised to fairly redistribute wealth someday. From an unknown source, thousands of people suddenly began to receive letters in the mail, inviting them to join an amazing plan in which an expenditure of just 1 dime, 10 cents, would quickly and certainly provide a return of more than $1,500. In today's dollars, this would be an offer of less than a $2 investment to produce more than $27,000. The people receiving the letters could not know that they were part of an exploding national phenomenon, leaving the impression that the fortune had come just to them, fulfilling the American dream myth that success is always gained individually, not in collective action. Each letter contained the names and addresses of 6 individuals. The letter instructed the recipient to send 10 cents, 1 dime, by mail to the person at the top of the list, then to take that person's name off the list and add one's own name to the bottom, making the total of 6 again. The letter was to be copied then with the new list, including the recipient's own name at the bottom, and resent to 5 other people whom the recipient would know, friends and family, and want to benefit also. The text of the letter explained that as the process continued, just 5 more cycles, the recipient's own name would rise to the top position on the list, and at that point, 15,625 others would each send a dime, providing the windfall of $1,562.50, arriving in the mail in dime currency. Historians believe the Send a Dime money chain letter originated in or near Denver, Colorado, also the first place where the news articles reported the strange occurrence and where the postal inspector quickly issued warnings that it was a fraud. The warnings were not heeded. To the contrary, the letters, and perhaps the government warnings played a part also, ignited a mania, spreading across the country. Millions of people soon joined in the hope and faith that financial deliverance had arrived. When the mania subsided, the U.S. Postal Service reportedly was left with 2 to 3 million letters in its dead letter office. The volume of mail that wound up in the government's dead letter office increased as much as 1,500% during the craze. Up to 200 letters a day were mailed to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. 6 years into the deepest period of economic depression in American history, few established institutions held any popular credibility, causing people to take the mysterious chain letter seriously and enabling the money chain letter to escape common sense analysis. The mania also gained validity from firmly held beliefs, even if never consciously examined, such as faith in the American dream and the widely held notion that positive thinking can manifest prosperity. The arrival of these letters seemed to many the fulfillment of their hopes. The chain letter's anonymous and mysterious origins seemingly added to its authenticity. Though few people today know the details, background, or scale of the Send a Dime mania, and it is seldom included as part of America's economic history, almost everyone has heard of chain letters. They have largely disappeared in their earlier formats, but they left an enormous imprint on the public, made indelible by the time of depression hardship in which they occurred and the intensity of hope they aroused. A review of the chain letter hysteria in the 1930s reveals where major elements of Mittinger and Castleberry's new plan could have originated, almost as a rehearsal for formalizing the chain letter into a durable commercial format. The plan they would invent would also have the friends and family as prime recruiting prospects and require a payment to participate, much more than a dime. It would add the feature of continued payments. Like the chain letters, the plan would make an astonishing and electrifying income promise, based entirely on expanding multiple levels of new people also joining and paying and bringing in others to do the same. A key difference which satisfied Mittinger's desire to, quote, keep the income from the people I develop and never lose, quote, his cut of the man's sales would be that the person's name on the top, as long as that person kept paying, would never be taken off. New people could lengthen and expand the chain forever, and for as long as they kept paying, the cuts would keep flowing upward. Daniel W. Van Arsdale, a retired mathematician and self-described amateur folklorist, recently assembled a history of this strange and largely forgotten chapter in Main Street economics. His enormous archive of records of the chain letter movement is referenced as an authority on the subject by the well-respected Snopes.com resource for authenticating or debunking popular claims and beliefs. Van Arsdale describes the public response following government warnings against participation. He documented how mailmen could hardly bear the weight of a massive increase in letters, each containing a dime. The seemingly spontaneous event was quickly organized into commercial enterprises to increase the financial returns while also creating new ways to financially profit from the delusion. Movie theaters attracted viewers by offering send-a-dime forms. Chain letter factories appeared, he reported, that supplied cheap printed forms and often the services of typists and notaries. His research details how, under warnings by state and federal law enforcement, the chain letter also evolved to evade postal laws. Van Arsdale's tracking of the send-a-dime frenzy shows the direct line leading from the anonymous chain letter phenomenon into related commercial pyramid schemes. The income opportunity represented by the official letter were sold. Purchasing the letter, rather than just accepting one for free in the mail, actually added authenticity. Selling the letter further validated the sense of legitimately creating a viable return. The absurdity of the endless chain proposition was covered over in seemingly legitimate steps that mimicked the real marketplace, promising to lead somehow to extraordinary returns on the scale often reported in the stock market among the moneyed elite. The developments in the chain letter mania of 1935 are an eerie precursor to Mittinger and Castleberry's plan, concocted just 8 years later. After signing up and buying required products, Neutralite distributors would then be authorized to recoup initial investments by recruiting other distributors who would join the plan and buy products, with the potential of returns being generated by thousands of more recruits, perhaps millions, in successive levels. What was made to look like a normal direct selling business, in truth, was a payment scheme entitling the participants to get in on the main chance of unlimited income based on the endless chain. The send-a-dime craze, brief as it was, showed the inevitable direction the friends and family pyramid scheme would take of formalizing into businesses. The price soon escalated from dimes to dollars, and the promised returns catapulted proportionately. Makeshift factories emerged during the episode, adding efficiency and organization to what began spontaneously and spread virally. A Cincinnati, Ohio newspaper during this time reported police closing down one such chain letter factory whose operator claimed to employ 125 people. Van Arsdale shows that although the send-a-dime program withered quickly under government threats, negative news, and the plain realities that few people ever actually gained any benefits, the chain letter phenomenon did not disappear, but rather proliferated and evolved into new forms. He directly connects the send-a-dime scheme to the first, quote, gifting schemes, appearing in 1978 and continuing through the present time, in which hundreds of schemes have spread across the country and other nations as well, enrolling millions of people, far more than ever joined the chain letter outbreak of the mid-1930s. The gifting schemes are a non-business pyramid scheme phenomenon operating as a close relative to the hundreds of multi-level marketing companies that also emerged after 1979. The chain letter mania reinforced the dark truth on a much vaster scale that the trick of exponential expansion had enormous potential for swindlers. Most of the original money chain letters included the electrifying figure of $1,562.50 that would come back to the senders. Did people understand the absurdity of this proposition or the math behind it? In hindsight, and considering that the money chain letter lives on as gifting schemes and other iterations, and continues to vex and dupe millions of people, it is apparent that few people did understand the realities of the chain letter math. As designed, only 1 out of every 15,625 could possibly be compensated. These long odds were multiplied to even greater absurdity by the preposterous condition that everyone would faithfully follow the instructions through 5 successive mailings. Even one break in the chain reduced the rewards significantly. Yet millions participated and banked lifelong hopes in it. The letters of 1935, just as in the gifting and multi-level marketing schemes that were its legacy, adeptly play upon this blind spot in popular consciousness and awareness. Behind all the various money chain letter formats that were invented was the same illusory source for the promised rewards. It was as close and real as your own family and next-door neighbors. Their money would be your gain. As Ponzinomics evolved, critical judgment was not only diverted, but would be banished by dogmas, values, and specialized language, pretenses of a viable and beneficial economic model. The national chain letter hysteria confirmed that almost no one understood the fraudulent proposition behind the belief system and its dire consequences. It also formally broke the barrier of commercializing friends and family. Ponzi's sin was pardoned. Now everybody was doing it. On the foundations of door-to-door sales deceptions honed in the cemetery plot business, Ponzi's famous fraud, and the national chain letter delusion, the new Neutralite emerged. It would sell vitamins, but its true product was a hyper-commercialized parody of success, reserved only for a few at the top, while held out to all seekers as a fulfillment of the American dream. Hidden beneath its garb of economic pretenses and direct selling identity was a monstrously distorted anatomy. Only by removing the disguise and dissecting that anatomy, as undertaken in the next chapter, can the ugly reality be made plain.